and welcome to this week's episode. I have the author, Julie Lythcott Haims, on the show today. I just wrapped up the interview. I'm doing the intro afterwards, and our conversation felt like a warm hug. I am thrilled to bring this interview to you. Julie Lythcott Haims believes in humans, and she is deeply interested in helping us and in helping us learn what gets in our way. And she brings it all on this show today. So let me tell you a little bit about who she is. If you have not heard of her, she is the New York Times bestselling author of the Anti-Helicopter Parenting Manifesto, How to Raise an Adult, which gave part to a popular TED Talk, which I will have linked below in the notes. Her second book is a critically acclaimed and award-winning prose poetry memoir, Real American, which illustrates her experience as a Black and biracial person in white spaces. A third book, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, has been called a groundbreakingly frank guide to adulthood. So I can't say enough. She is a former corporate lawyer and Stanford dean. She holds a BA from Stanford, a JD from Harvard, and an MFA in writing from California College of the Arts. Ooh, she currently serves on the boards of Common Sense Media and the Black Women's Health Imperative, and is on the advisory board of leanin.org and Parents Magazine. And now, my dear warriors, she's on the Love Your Life show. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the Love Your Life show. Julie, I am so thrilled to bring you here today.
Susie, I'm excited to be here with you and your amazing community of listeners.
They are an amazing community. And I am thrilled to bring some Julie into their lives because I have your two books behind me if they are watching on screen. And I started learning about you through either your TED Talk or your book, How to Raise an Adult, and they have been instrumental to me as I have 5 sons, and my youngest is now 17, senior in high school. So I have several that have launched and done, the college experience and all of that. And your work has really helped me put a sort of a pause or a soother. It's felt soothing.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I got to say right away, first of all, 5 sons. Wow. All hail, Susie. I have so many questions for you about what you've learned across the trajectory from the oldest to the youngest, because you have changed and parenting has changed and America has changed. I love that you feel soothed and supported by my work, because I am most definitely aiming for that. And I do it often with language that is blunt and frank. So there's this boom. And I'm doing that actually to crack the facade of performative parenting, performing the self. Like we all carry around these facades of I'm fine, I'm perfect, I'm good, right? These masks that we wear, these walls we put up, whatever your visual metaphor is of what we put up so people can't see the real us. I'm trying to actually jostle and crack that facade so it comes down, so the real us is there. And sometimes I think people, I know that I'm experienced by others as blunt and frank, but you've hit on the purpose, which is I'm actually trying to get to the tender, gooey places, because that's where we feel most seen and supported on this human journey.
Oh, yes. I'm like, preach it, Julie. So my show is called the Love Your Life show, and I am a life coach, and I will consistently say I am a coach. I am not your friend. So I am, you're on the right show. I am all about calling people out like, well, that's your thought. And how is that serving you? And that is exactly what comes up with some of your parenting and some of your guidance, just in how to raise an adult and how to take responsibility for our lives. I think that might be where people view you or me as being overly harsh, whereas the intent is to help them live a life they love, to become an adult.
Exactly. And Susie, because you've read my books, I report from my own flawed experience. I look like an expert because my name is on books and I've held positions of authority and power. And in some ways I am an expert on some things, but I also report from my own parenting journey where I can identify stumbles I've made or absolutely wrong trajectories I have pursued, all in furtherance of helping my kids, of course, and loving on them hard, but just not really understanding the correlation between my behavior and what will happen with them. And so I try to demonstrate, look, I can be critical of myself. Therefore, we're all safe here in being willing to look at our own behaviors for the purpose of actually helping our kids become healthy, successful, thriving humans in the adult world.
I really appreciate that. It's from this sort of non-judgmental place. I like to say that, like, I help clients sort of take the sunglasses off their life, like, so they can see it more clearly, and then they get to decide. Like, you can continue to overparent or, you know, underparent, whatever you're, you know, it's just to have that clairvoyance that that's what you're doing. Let's not tell ourselves.
Aware. Right, right.
Yeah. So could you
look at what, sorry, we could, I know you got a
no,
question.
I know, I'm like, look at that. That's exactly, I'm like, in my imperfections, that's how I go.
Well, you know, I think it's, let's get clear on, let's become aware of what we are doing. Because often we're just, you know, we think we know, but we're not, we're just going through the motions, doing what everyone in our community says is good parenting or is the right trajectory for our kids. So let's first try to get super clear on what are we doing by way of choices, decisions, ways of being. And then, as you've said, you can decide to continue with it or not. But step one is certainly, can you shine a light on your own self and get clear on the what and the why behind the what of what you're doing?
Well, and that is something that I have found comes out of your work, because, as you know, I always say the first step is becoming that compassionate observer. And some of the compassion for me comes from knowing, like, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And could you speak a little? It really helps me have compassion for myself when I am overparenting, when I hear you speak of, you know, sort of how parenting changed from parent into more of a job, and how, you know, the influences of the 80s made us now have helped us become who we are.
The 80s seem like so long ago, and yet, of course, for people of our age, they're very familiar, the 80s, but they are quite, you know, we're talking about changes in parenting and therefore childhood that go back to the 80s for a reason. It's important to mark when the shift happened. And it's really these shifts back in the 80s that created this new normal that we have now. So the 5 things, in no particular order, that all happened across America in sort of 1981 to 1986 kind of time frame, very short period of time, 5 things in no particular order. Stranger Danger was born with a terribly horrific movie dramatizing the abduction and murder of a real child that this happened to, but it went sort of viral, to use modern language for what we would have said. Everyone watched it in the 80s. The Playdate was born. Children were no longer finding each other after school to play with. Parents were arranging play with other parents and also deciding what the kids would play with. And also, if the kids seemed bored, the parents would give them ideas. And also, if the kids weren't getting along, the parents would sort of help them sort it out. And so play became moderated, mediated by parents, deprive kids of the sense of how to work things out, how to compromise, how to cooperate, how to cope with difficult feelings. We got safer in cars with seatbelt laws in this era, and with car seat laws, and on bicycles, bike helmet laws, undeniably saved lives, but led to a climate of, we have to bubble wrap every single aspect of our homes to protect the children from it, instead of just making sure they didn't drink the poison, but let them bump into the table edge and let them learn that some things are, you know, pointy and some things are hot, and right, so that they learn how to be safe instead of the environment always made safe for them. We began applauding them for participation. Ribbons and trophies, certificates and awards for every single insignificant and significant thing they participated in. And so it was, everyone gets a trophy, everything is good, everything is great, we're not keeping score, you're amazing. The self-esteem movement, which turned out to benefit, I think, only those manufacturers of the ribbons and trophies and certificates and awards, because we spent millions of dollars on them. But it created this sense of the need for constant affirmation, that adults in particular are always going to tell you how amazing you are, which isn't reality. And then finally, on the academic side, a book was published called A Nation at Risk that said American teenagers were underperforming as against all teenagers in the world. And we needed, more testing and more teaching to the test to get our kids to improve their academic output. And so childhood became watched over by parents on playgrounds, sidewalks, in malls, grocery stores, the sidelines of kids' activities, play itself, homework. Childhood was now met with this hovering cloud of parents, always there, worried and applauding. It was like this fear and applause, constant attention. And it became a full-time job, to your point. To constantly attend every moment in your child's life is work. It is hard to basically be attached to a leash with your child at the other end and lead your own life as an adult. It's exhausting. And it deprives them of the very experiences that are going to enable them to be healthy, competent, skilled, confident, mentally well adults.
Yes. I love having that sort of background and that, the statistics, so that whether, some of our listeners were not even alive in the 80s, which was not my case, but to understand how that did influence the inclination now to oversee that if we weren't sort of, as you said, like bubble wrapping our kids and being that like lawnmower parent clearing the path, it actually was deemed as a bad parent. Like, you're being and that's how we feel then, the guilt, like, oh my goodness, what am I doing by letting them
Right.
walk outside without a prescribed activity.
Right. So let me tell you two more things that are essential. One is, it looks like it works, which is why these behaviors proliferated. Okay. So I'm going to tell you why it looks like it works. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit of evidence about what we now know with the benefit of all this hindsight about the long-term harm. So if you will, short-term gain, long-term pain. It works in that if we are constantly next to them at the park or the playground, we will catch them if they fall. Their knee goes unskinned. If we're constantly there on play dates to make sure everyone's always getting along, they don't have those uncomfortable feelings. It looks like it works. If we're over helping with the homework and just completing the things they didn't quite get, or rewriting their paragraph or their entire essay for them to get them the better grade, we might get them the better grade. Okay. It works. If we yell at the coach, if we're that parent, like, we might convince the coach, right? It worked. It looks like it works. The long-term pain associated with that short-term gain is we're depriving the kid of having the experiences that would teach them to do for themselves. So they don't know how to keep themselves safe metaphorically in the world, because they haven't known how to keep themselves safe on a playground. They don't know how to cooperate with other humans, because at the play date level, they weren't put in a situation where they had to work it out. They don't know how to necessarily achieve on their own academically, because we've been there to clean it up and fix it and make it better. And research out of the lab of Ellie Leibowitz at Yale, written up in the Atlantic magazine 18 months ago, shows that when we over accommodate our kids' fears, we can turn those fears into full-blown anxiety. 3 examples. If your kid's afraid of the dark and you're like, okay, you'll never be in the dark. Your kid's afraid to be alone. You're like, okay, buddy, you'll never be alone. Your kid really is very restricted with the foods they like, not out of allergy, but out of sensitivity or preference. And we accommodate by always making sure they have that little Tupperware of pasta with butter and Parmesan cheese, which I was guilty of doing with my 7-year-old, taking it places with us. It looks loving. We're doing it because we love them, right?
Yeah, other moms are like, good job, Julie.
Right. We're signaling that fear is so real and valid. I will curate the environment so you never experience it. Research shows it ends up effectively overblowing that fear into like an, oh my gosh, my parents go to such lengths to protect me from it. I must need protection from it. It creates this anxiety. What we're supposed to do is empathize and empower. Okay, buddy, I know this is hard for you. I can see that. Do you want to talk about it? I'm here to listen. I love you. And then after some empathizing, validating of their feelings, with a smile on our face and maybe a pat on the shoulder and look in the eye, we can say, I know this is hard for you. I can see it, but I know one day it won't be this hard.
Mm.
And we walk away.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
with it, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. And
Mhm.
anybody listening who's like, yep, that's me. I'm peeing in a bucket in my basement instead of going upstairs to the bathroom to leave my 3-year-old playing in the basement alone because he's afraid of being alone, or my 5-year-old or my 7-year-old. This is an example in the article.
Mm.
Right? You're the one preparing the food to take with you everywhere. Again, not in an allergy situation, but outside of that context, you need to check out this Atlantic article. I hope you'll put it in the notes.
Mhm.
It really opened my eyes to patterns in my own house between me and my husband and our kids.
Well, I was going to ask that. I mean, because I love how you bring up the short-term gain, because it does look good. And the kid is usually pretty appreciative. Like, sure, email my teacher. It's easier for us than they have to come up with the words, or sure, redo my essay for college, or sure, and yet then we have that long-term effect. And I definitely see, as you said, my parenting shifted over the years, and I can see how some of my sons have more confidence and less anxiety than others, because I have given them the message that, no, you can do it. You don't need mom attached to your side to do it. You've got it. Like, you can do it.
Right. And that's not abandonment, and it's not rejection. It's this very loving empathize and empower, right?
Mm.
It's telling them, I know you can, or I'm pretty sure you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see you try. It's all of that is rooting for them, rather than I'll handle it. Oh, it's okay. I'll do it. Of course we can write a better email. Duh, we're grown. Of course we're going to get the algebra right. I mean, if we remember, right, we've taken algebra. The
Mm-hmm.
whole, and see now how absurd it is. Let's dial way back. We don't overparent when they're learning to walk, because we know they wouldn't actually be learning to walk if we went behind them on our knees and put our hands around their rib cage and kind of nudged them forward to the like, yay, we're walking. We'd be like, no, we're not walking. The minute I let
go walking here,
we know that would not be walking. That would not be teaching them to walk. It would be enabling them to walk, with our behavior really being the support. That's the rest of life, though. We are effectively doing that every time we write the email, we talk to the teacher, right? There are sometimes when we do need to step in.
Mm-hmm.
There's 5% of the time when it's really problematic and an adult is required. But the rest of it, it's like we're playing a game of bowling and we're pulling in the guardrails, like that those who are watching on YouTube, like the guardrails are so narrow around kids. All they have to do is throw the ball and it'll hit all 10 pins, because we are there with all our effort being the guardrail to prevent any kind of variance. We're supposed to have the guardrails where the gutters are, so our kids don't fall into the gutter of life. But all of this meandering, whether they hit 0 pins, 1, 2, 5, 7, or 10, that's for them to figure out as they play this game called life and get consequently get better at it.
Oh, I so appreciate you saying that, because I do hear from so many people that they're viewing this type of parenting sort of as love, like they're, that they're being a bad parent if they're not following along with what they're seeing around them, and taking care, calling the teacher, taking care of their child when the child is crying and saying they don't know or they can't fix it, and sees this as their role and responsibility. How would you suggest for that parent to start sort of stepping out of that, over-parenting role?
Well, there are two things. Is this love? And of course, it's lovingly intended. I would say that the more loving thing to do is to offer the empathy around the feelings, around the situation, but to appreciate this is my child's life. It's not mine to drag them down the path of life or push them from behind. It's mine to be near them and root for them to keep going. And so validating the emotions, listening without fixing. How many of us want to be listen to. How many women complain that their partners just, we have a concern, we complain, we vent, and they want to fix. No, I don't want you to fix. I just want you to hear me. That's what our kids want too.
Yeah, then we go along to fix our kids. So it's like, wait a minute.
Right? So many of us know intrinsically how yucky it feels to be the recipient of someone else's need to fix. And yet we do it with our kids. Micromanagement is another term in the workplace. We know how awful it feels when your manager has to know about every little detail and has to course correct all the time. It's annoying. It makes you not want to come to work because they think they care about it more than you do. So fine, why don't we just let them do it? Right? This is where kids start to develop what psychologists call learned helplessness. Like, it doesn't really matter what I do. Good things will happen.
Yeah, it's never going to be good enough. Right. Because I'm 14 and they're 50, so they have a little more experience, right?
Yeah. So, but how to do something about it, I think, frankly, Susie, is a whole lot of parents need a whole lot of therapy to get at why am I so anxious? Why am I so insecure? Why am I so, these are probably, there's something underlying the anxiety that animates our need to know in every moment that everything is being done right. Okay. When we're obsessed with how the dishwasher is stacked and it's like, I can't have my kid do it because they do it wrong. How is your kid ever going to learn to do it right if you don't let them do it and give them a tiny bit of feedback? Hey, next time, buddy, turn the forks over. They won't catch the goo that way. Let it go. Invest. Loving your child is teaching them all the things they're going to need to know so that when you're dead, they're still capable. That's what good parents.
Like, how do we do the laundry? Right.
Right. They have to learn everything. And when we do it all for them, we're saying that the lesson is, don't worry, we'll always be here to handle life for you. And that's terribly damaging for two reasons. One, it's a lie because we'll be dead and gone one day before them. We hope it turns out that way. We don't want our kids to predecease us. And second, in us handling everything, they literally can't. And then the psychological harm accrues in them, which is the psyche knows I'm not capable. I'm not sure I can. I don't know how to do anything, right? They are correlating these overly helpful parenting behaviors with anxiety and depression in children. Not to say it's a causation, but they are related.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful. You were the dean of freshman students, correct? At Stanford for 10 years. And so what were you seeing? Like, did you notice any sort of results of overparenting or what?
Sure. No, I just saw on my campus what administrators on every campus were seeing. This would have been the late 90s into the early 2000s through the aughts. We were seeing how helicopter parenting had arrived at the university, that the kids who had the first play date in 1984 were coming to college in 1998 with parents who couldn't let go. And it was a small number of parents then, but every year the number of parents behaving this way grew such that now I've not been a university administrator now for 9 years. I hear stories. It's just become so normal that parents want to be involved if there's a roommate dispute. Parents are reviewing their kids' work. Parents want to register their child for class. Parents are reading their child's email. We began calling college students children in this era. They didn't used to be called children. Everybody was clear that you were an adult or a young adult, or certainly there was that expectation. I mean, if you just dial it back, we sent 18-year-olds to war. Remember the Vietnam War? I mean, I was a small child when the Vietnam War ended, but routinely 18-year-olds were sent to fight and die. And I'm not saying that was a good thing. My
18-year-old just went to Australia to college, and it was last December, COVID, and I remember hugging him goodbye at the airport, and I was just, trying to be that brave parent. He's like, Mom, kids my age went to war. I've got this.
Right.
Like, you're going to an amazing country.
Right.
I might not be able to see you for an extended period of time.
Right. So, we know a lot more now. We know that the prefrontal cortex, which is the location of decision-making and planning, doesn't fully form until 24, 25. They're saying this is not new. This is something we now know, that we are still in formation. And yet we've had this expectation that 18 means you can fight and die for our country, and you can vote, and you can, right? But despite those things, we're also infantilizing 18-year-olds. And it's not that we start infantilizing them at 18. We never stop infantilizing. We're tying their shoes too long. We're cutting their food too long. We're swooping in to solve instead of empathize and empower. You've got this. And it results in this chronologically grown human who really within themselves, somewhere deep down knows, I'm not sure I can.
Yeah.
And our behavior has contributed to that. So that's why I wrote this new book, Your Turn. And I love that you have it on your shelf behind you. This is me saying to young adults, regardless of how they were parented, overparented, underparented, beautifully parented, many are feeling stuck at the doorway to adulthood and trying to figure out a way forward. And I'm trying to show up very compassionately and very bluntly, which is my style, with advice that I hope will be of use to them.
It is deeply resonating. And I want to touch on this because you just brought up how sometimes we are parenting and we think it's love, but is it really love if we leave our kid with that legacy of, ooh, can I really do it? I'm not sure, because mom obviously didn't think I could. And so you touched on how that's sort of our own anxiety. And I think that is the definition of high functioning codependency. This like over involvement in other people's feeling states and experiences to hold on to a sense of control. It's like managing our anxiety through them. And this Your Turn book that I've recommended it to people in my groups that know this interview is coming up, they've said, they got it with the intention to maybe share with one of their kids or someone else. And they, women in their 35s and all are like, oh my goodness, thank you, to help us, as you said, like get the parents into therapy, get the parents into coaching to help through with that. And that just addressing, we can feel our feelings. We've got that.
Let me give you an example, and thank you for recommending my book to your community. I appreciate it. And I've been delighted to hear that even though the target for the book is 18 to 34, I've heard from people in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s saying, I feel like you wrote this for me. And I'm not surprised, actually, because adulting is a stage where you more or less know you can handle it, whatever it is. You're not meant to go it alone, but you're your own responsibility and you get to make choices and solve problems and so on. And so I think the book is just a mirror that allows the reader at whatever age and stage they are to see themselves in it where they will and make, and make of it what they will. I want to tell you a brief story about my anxiety and how I saw it show up with my kid. I've got a 22-year-old Sawyer, 20-year-old Avery. Sawyer's a son, Avery's a daughter, and Sawyer has been home for the entirety of the pandemic. And one day we were in the kitchen, must have been about a year ago. I was pulling together dinner. I'm always, when I make a nice dinner, which is not, a lot of people in my family cook. I'm not the sole cook, but when I'm doing it, when I'm really doing it, it's going to be a lot of food and I want it all to land on time and I want it to be hot at the table and everyone comes. I get stressed about that. I mean, I'm sure the look on my face is one of this, like,
what's happening?
Right. And it's,
what's up with mom? Oh, she's cooking.
Right. So Sawyer is in the kitchen. I'm starting to pull a meal together. That's probably an hour away. Sawyer is making something in the meantime for himself. And he's over at the toaster oven. He's like, Mom, do I put this at 375 or 400? And I was already in my stressed kitchen mode, but I was also annoyed that my then probably 20 or 21-year-old did not know that it doesn't really matter. First of all, it's a toaster
oven. They just say 375.
Why does he need to, why is he asking me? And I just sort of exasperatedly was like, I don't know, Sawyer, figure it out. And I turned away. And I have a mindfulness practice that allows me to scan what's going on. What are you feeling? What triggered that? So I very quickly got from my own self, oh, you're frustrated with him because he can't seem to figure out how to use his toaster oven. Why do you suppose he can't? Because you've taught him that it matters 375 or 400, 18 minutes or 25 minutes. Like he is the product of the home he's been raised in.
Yeah.
So, and you're so stressed out in the kitchen, Julie. So I turned around. I said, Sawyer, first of all, I know I get stressed out in the kitchen. I don't know what that's about, but I want you to know I'm aware and I'm working on it. And when you see a look on my face of in the kitchen, please know it has nothing to do with you. It's my own stuff. Number one. And he just looked at me like, wow. And I said, second, here's the answer you're looking for. I don't know. Whether it's 375 or 400, I don't know. If you put it at 375 and it's supposed to be 400, you're just going to have to leave it in a little longer.
Right. It's going to be gooey or whatever it is you're making.
Literally, like you're going to get some data after you try this. So just do it, be attentive, see what happens, and you learn for next time. And I smiled. And just melted his anxiety, my anxiety. And that's, I'm telling this story because it's that day to day. It's that subtle and omnipresent. It's not, I'm not talking about I'm abusive or I'm an alcohol, I'm yelling. I'm not that person. I'm a person with probably run-of-the-mill anxiety that flakes off me and ends up on my children. It makes me a control freak and makes them worry that everything has to be just so in order to please mom or to get it right. And owning it, letting my child know I am a work in progress. I am sorry. I am working on me. Please don't take it personally. And now that I've put it down, let me tell you what I wish I'd been able to say the first time.
And that's adulting.
Yeah.
That like, don't take this on. I mean, that is one of the main things that mindfulness has helped me with too. And forgiveness of myself, like looking at myself where I can say, wow, that was not, I like using the word skillful. Like I did not skillfully do that, son. I am sorry. I'm owning my side of the road and just giving them the opportunity to see that, yeah, adulting, until the day we die, we're going to continue to learn and grow and have these challenges. And yes, that freedom for them too. And, the frustration I hear of parents saying, when they start trying to move away from the over parenting and they're like, I put him in charge of the trash and he just brought out an empty bin. What the heck? And it's like, okay, let's back up. It's similar to the toaster oven story. It's like, well, how does he know? We've done it a certain way for so many years. I think, you need to take a deep breath, say, when I say bring out the trash every week, I mean, at some point during the week, empty all the trash cans in the house, put that in the bin, bring the bin out to the corner after the truck has come, because my son once brought the bin back full of trash. It was like after a Tuesday at school and I was like, what happened? But there's that, like explaining it all. And then also letting them make a mistake. This like, oh, that time that he did bring the trash can back and he's like, oh my God, mom, what do I do? I was like, oh God, I don't know. What are you going to do? Like, I've never had this. Like, I don't know, sort of like you, like, I don't know. Is it 375 or 400? But we get so like I think it is our anxiety and this, like, we have to parent in such a way to not screw these little delicate creatures up.
Yeah. I love that story. And I want to say that a lot of us were raised, of course, by definition in an earlier time. We were definitely all raised in an earlier time, but often by parents who were very authoritarian. So they would have been cruel to us. They would have called us a bad name for what your son did, ridiculed us, demeaned us, all of these things, the angry, the sort of shaming.
Had a big consequence.
Right? As a way to teach us a lesson. Parents used to think that our anger, our bigger bodies, our bigger voices, our anger, the angry, like that was a way to teach kids. We know better now. We know that creates a traumatic environment. Kids will learn something from that, but it's not good stuff. And that it's better to be in this space of we're all learning and growing. We cut each other a lot of slack. We empathize with oh no, oh my gosh, oh yeah, that must be so frustrating. Okay, I can brainstorm with you if you need, right? But ultimately, this is your responsibility. And I'm sure you'll figure it out, and maybe the only answer is, next week's bin is going to be twice as full. Maybe there's no dump to take it to. Maybe
you better take your big old body and jump on that trash so we have a little more room for next door, or whatever he figured out. I don't even know.
Right. Come up with a solution that works. Let me know. I trust you've got this. Smile, move on. Moving on, I think, is a skill we need to practice more because we hover. because we
Mhm.
want to just make sure, and so we stay too long. We have our hem and hawing long parenting conversation. Well, what kids really need is empathy, empower, clarity, and we have to move on. We have to sometimes leave the room and
Mm.
not be in our kids' way. When
Mhm.
we've had the tough conversation and we're done and we can smile and say, I love you, you've got this. Let me know if you need my help. We sometimes I have found physically leaving the room gets me out of the energy of the space. I'm still wondering, do I need to do more here? Do I need to control it,
Mhm.
oversee it to make sure, that when we nudge and nag and constantly remind and are always there just in case, it's annoying as heck. It tells the kid, my parent doesn't trust that I've got this. My parent thinks that they need to oversee everything. We're treating our kids like they're little prisoners, who have to be under watch 24/7, 365, can't be trusted,
Yeah, little prisoners, and also the pressure that puts on us. Because I know that when I stay too long, or when I'm talking too much, or when it's coming from a place, and I'm sure I'm thinking it's from love, but that I need to teach a lesson. They need to learn. Like, I know the right way. It's like, let me and it's really, it's overwhelming for them. They're learning then, like, oh, it's mom's way or the highway. And it's overwhelming for me. Like, I just like to remember, okay, I've said what needs to be said, back away. I am not the only influence in their life. And let's just, bring my ego down a notch. Like, it doesn't always have to be me. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about, because we've spoken about kids and then getting to college, and this, this overparenting. And I guess I see it with kids in college, but I also see it with kids in high school. And the cell phone, as you've referred to it, as the extended umbilical cord. Could you explain what you mean by that?
First of all, yeah, that was a term coined by some researchers back
Oh,
in the late aughts when the smartphone came out in 2007, shortly after some researchers somewhere, I wish I knew their names, came up with this term, the world's longest umbilical cord. Think about it, parents couldn't really text effectively before the smartphone because with flip phones, remember, it was like 333-44-777. Had to push numbers a bunch of times to get the equivalent, the right letter corresponding to an old telephone keypad. I mean, it sounds like
yeah.
a century.
Archaic.
Right, so
And
parents,
how about before the phones? Right.
right, they knew,
That was my mom's cell phone.
right. We learned how to text with a smartphone, and
Yeah.
then we did, and we became present in our kids' school lives. If they had a cell phone in middle school, high school, we became present in their college lives. The phone, call your parents went from a, like, if it's an emergency, call your parent, to like, oh no, my parent is now in my pocket. I would have students whose parents a student would have an appointment with me at the university, a office hours appointment. Their phone would ring. They would glance at it, which in my day would have been like rude to
Yeah.
having a meeting with the dean and you're like looking at your phone, like,
Yeah.
and then the student would be like, it's my mom, and shrug their shoulders and pick it up and answer the call while in a meeting. Yes, mom. Yep. There was nothing like, mom, I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah.
Those boundaries were gone.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that that's an example of what they were pointing to. You would overhear students talking to their parents as they walked to class, as they walked out of class. And I want to say to us parents, and like, what are we so afraid of? Why are we so needy? Why do we need to curtail our kids' freedoms such that we always text me every 20 minutes that you're driving? Well, is that safe? You want your kid to pull over every 20 minutes to give an update on how they're doing? I mean,
Mhm.
you're already GPS tracking them, which I think is insanity. I've actually written a piece on this called What Me Worry, the Rise of Stealth Parenting,
Oh,
which side of history, how technology is reshaping democracy in our lives. And I talk about how this GPS surveillance of children really does relegate them to a status previously reserved for people in psychiatric wards and incarcerated people. Those were the two sets of people we had heretofore decided were deserving of 24/7, 365 surveillance.
Yeah.
Whereas now it has become a facet of technology plus modern parenting that we constantly watch. I was on a plane with a guy, we're about to take off, and he was looking at the webcam in his house. Okay. And he said, there are shoes on the floor. You need to pick up those shoes. And a child ran. And I was like, and he looked at me with a smile, like, aren't I a good parent? And I just wanted to say, this is freaking creepy.
Yeah.
No, it is.
It is so, and I guess I sort of want to bring up the point that it goes both ways. So it is the kid, to give the kid the authority to not answer, which is really hard when you're still living in the house, like grades, 12 and younger, because you very well might get into trouble. And then that's on us as the parents to recognize, why are we texting in the middle of homecoming? I mean, I heard of, they're like, oh, I wanted to see if she was okay. I'm like, that's your anxiety. You do your breathing exercises. You get your coach to figure out how to, don't put that on them. But then also it's the other way of, once we send these overparented children to college and they don't know how to get by, that they're consistently, like, I will hear from parents, they're like, oh, I was up till 2 last night calling my daughter who was at the fraternity party and she didn't know what to say and she felt all alone. And oh
my God. Right. Look, that is the evidence of our undermining their capabilities, right? Whenever we're calling, are you okay? We're signaling you might not be okay.
It's that,
cause to worry about your okayness, right? Yeah. So look, technology plus the propensity to be all up in our kids every moment has really created a climate of surveillance and control, exacerbated fears in children. And we've got to turn this around. And that's why I said, dealing with our own anxieties, therapy, counseling, coaching for us as parents, so that we can back a little bit off. Right now, I'm showing for those watching on video, we're so enmeshed in our child's lives. It's like you put your 2 hands together and create a fist. It's like their life, our life. I don't know the difference. And we've got to get to this separate, but near enough. So I'm here for you just in case, but not so involved that you can't make your way without me. Because what's that kid at the fraternity party gonna do if her mom gets incapacitated? God forbid something happens. She will feel alone and abandoned in the world. Because
or say she follows her mom's directions, like instead she's like, oh, I went to talk to that guy. You're still robbing them of the confidence of doing it on their own, or and it's also pride. Like, one of my favorite emotions to feel is pride. And I can't really think of a time when I felt pride that didn't first involve some discomfort, like me reaching out to you and having you on the podcast. And then this, I'm feeling a little fear and getting my podcast questions ready, and then feeling proud that I did it. Like, we're robbing them of these greater, deeper feeling states because we're like, oh, they can't feel fear. I'm afraid if they feel fear, or whatever it is. I'm afraid if they feel lonely at the fraternity party.
Oh, that's so beautifully put. That is so beautifully put. We need to stay in our own lane. We have a lane. They have a lane, right? We can run. If life is a race, which is really the wrong metaphor, but if life is, let's imagine a track and it's life. Like, we're on this track with our kids, we're all in life together, but they have their lane and we have our lane, and we can't interfere with them by getting in their lane. If they're about to veer off course into some dangerous place, then we're there to be like, hey, I'm here for you, right? Here's the problem. Here's the problem. We've decided everything is dangerous. Decided every little thing is somehow going to impact the future we want them to have, whether it's an academically high achieving situation. Like, if I don't bring this backpack to school every day because they always forget it, they won't get into the right college. Instead of, my kid at some point has to learn to take their own stuff, and they've got to, the consequences of forgetting over and over for repeat offenders are actually the greater teacher and the greater love here. Right?
I really appreciate that. I mean, and it does speak to the parents' anxiety again, but that idea that, like, oh my gosh, so what if, the kid on the playground says something mean to them and we need to swoop in, because then we're damaging their confidence. It's sort of this, black or white thinking. They're going to be so damaged. I always say, like, no one comes out of childhood unscathed. Like, as you're saying as a parent, as I'm saying as, a coach and I, like, they don't. And that's part of life. I think that's how we're set up, that we need to have these wounds, that then we move through our life and we are working on them. So to parents,
that's where the skill comes from. We develop the skill from having not had the skill. We build it. It's a series of, the skill is ultimately built based on all of the experiences that led to it. Also the resilience, the ability to cope, knowing like, all right, that did not go well. I don't feel so good. I'm hurt. I'm sad. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. All right. That's valid. All right. Cry, yell, whatever it is, talk to someone. Get up the next day or 3 days later, however long it takes to process that and discover the sun still comes up. I'm still here. I'm fine. I'm going on. That's how we develop resilience, by having the tough stuff. I want to recommend a book that is not mine, just to your point of parents.
I see what it is. I love, recommend.
Yeah, this is What Do You Say by Bill Stixrud and Ned Johnson. It just came out this year. How to talk with kids to build motivation, stress tolerance, and a happy home. It's beautiful. And I had the honor of getting an early copy and blurbing it, writing a blurb.
Oh, yay.
And it's so practical. It gives you examples of when this happens, what your tendency might be, because you want to fix it, you want to make it go away. But what actually builds the skill and the resilience in kids is to say it differently. And they really give you very, very practical examples. So I love this book.
I am so glad you mentioned that. One of my favorite parenting tools came from his first book. I think it's both of their first book. Maybe it wasn't their first book, but the first one I read, and the Stinks and Handle tool. Which is that, the daughter calls from the fraternity party. Oh my God, I'm afraid. And it's that like, oh, that stinks. I'm sorry. How are you going to handle it? Like that in itself builds resilience. That like, you're empathizing. And I'm sorry. Sometimes I say the sucks and handle tool, depending on how old your kid is, but like, oh, that sucks. She said no. Oh, ugh. And then how are you going to handle it is the exact opposite of overparenting. It's that like, I believe in you. I trust in you. And I think
that's right. Yeah. I call it empathize and empower. It's the same thing. That stinks. It's funny. I don't know that from their first book. It's good to know. Yeah. That's exactly right. It signals that we know they can and that we're rooting for them to be able. And that is fuel for them. It's not abandonment. It's not rejection. It's rooting for them. And psychologically, that if you're obnoxious, if you're like, well, how do you think you're going to handle, like if you bring all your judgment and anger and your own insecurity to it, that is problematic.
That's different.
In a very loving way, right? That sucks. How do you think you're going to handle it? Yeah.
I love it. I do. My husband uses that with me and it feels really good because then he's not fixing it and and it's just that like, oh, that stinks, Susie. I'm so sorry. Like, what are you going to do? And it's that like, it just opens your brain and that more growth mindset. What am I going to do? Right. For our kids and everything. So, this has been a wonderful chat and I am really appreciative of your time. I want listeners to know that there are both of, the books behind me. I know you've written more than these two books, but in terms of parenting and adulting and empowering, these books have so many resources in them. I know a lot of my listeners have kids that are heading, in their senior year or junior year, or even, parents with kids in 8th grade are already thinking of colleges. And there's some great sections in there to help guide with really practical advice, Julie, and I'm very thankful on which, recommendations and rankings of colleges to look at and which ones not to look at. And so practical advice, it's not about, abandonment parenting. And then also you have amazing resources in this adulting and how to become your best adult. And I love it. As a 50-year-old, I'm learning in there and just really appreciating it. Thank you. I appreciate
that, Susie. Appreciate it a lot and appreciate everyone who's listened to this conversation, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. Look, I'm rooting for all of us to make it. That's my work writ large. I used to be a lawyer. I used to be a college dean. Now I'm writing books and getting to be on podcasts like this one and chat with people about these issues and be in community. And I'm just really rooting for us all to make it and get out of our own way and deal with the obstacles in our path outside of us. And so I hope folks will check me out on my website, julielythcotthaims.com. Social media everywhere, J. Lythcott Haims. Please follow. Please feel free to message me. I'm very excited to be in community with folks. And my last thing I got to tell you about, Susie, is I have this space online called Julie's Pod. It comes with a sticker if you want one. I'm showing it to the
Fun.
it's a sticker, and it's just, you're in Julie's Pod. I write there roughly weekly, short form writing, just what's on my mind. I try to respond to what's happening in the world or in my own life. I'm very vulnerable, so that I can demonstrate the power of connection that's possible when we're vulnerable. And I invite people to comment, and I have an anonymous phone number people can call, 1-877-HI-JULIE, if they want.
My phone, Julie, what fun.
Isn't that great? It's an old school phone. And I listen and I report out what people have said while keeping their identity private. And all of this is at jlythcotthaims.bulletin.com, which is an online writing space that I'm a part of, jlythcotthaims.bulletin.com. The platform is Bulletin, and I'm J. Lythcott Haims, and the little home I've created there is called Julie's Pod. And
I will put all of that in the show notes. So that's different than I've been listening to your Facebook Live. They seem to be regular weekly.
That's where I'm rounding up the calls that come to this phone number, 1-877-HI-JULIE. Weekly on Mondays at noon, my time here in California. I talk about the calls that have come in, and I respond to them. And I'm writing as well at jlythcotthaims.bulletin.com. So it's my writing that I hope foments comment, that people will comment on and connect with each other around. And if you're not comfortable commenting in public, basically in the online platform, you can call this number. I'm just trying to create space for humans to be human, be real with one another, discover we're not alone because other people are going through stuff too.
They are, and I really appreciate that's the intent of this show, the Love Your Life show, to bring people on and guidance and support so that we all can live lives, everyday lives, not just the vacation lives, but that are feeling more loving and supported. So thank you so much for coming, Julie.
Thank you for having me. And again, thanks to everyone who listened. Hope everyone has a great day, whatever day it is you're watching or listening.